Today, we're going to walk through why Mark, a 6-year-old with a solid career, decided it was time to take his pension and fully retire. And not just the decision itself, but the real numbers, trade-offs, and calculations that went into it. Because the truth is, the pension choice is one you make just once, can never reverse it, and it will affect you for the rest of your retirement. And while we've been told that if you're lucky enough to have a pension, you should take the lump sum, because it'll give you more control, more flexibility, and ultimately more wealth. But that's not always the smarter move, especially if you want a secure income in early retirement. Sometimes the steady paycheck you can't outlive is worth far more than watching another account balance grow. And when you run the numbers, the safer option just could end up being the richer one as well. Now, I've helped dozens of couples in their early 50s and 60s work through the same decision, and the results sometimes surprise them. If you're new here, I'm Rachel Camp. I am a CFP professional and the owner of Camp Wealth, where I help clients confidently retire before age 65. So in this video, I'll walk through Mark and his wife Linda's exact case. They have $1 million in investments, a $50,000 pension, and a lump sum offer on that pension, so you can see exactly how to evaluate your own pension with clarity. Starting off, we are going to walk through key factors that anyone who has a pension must consider when making this decision. And then we'll go into the key elements and what they were for Mark that tipped this decision in favor of the pension instead of the lump sum. So the first thing anyone with a pension has to understand is their payment options. I see a lot of clients often overwhelmed by all the different options they are offered here. So we'll start with just the pension options and discuss the lump sum later. So you'll probably see things like single life, 100% joint survivor, 50% joint survivor, single life, 10-year certain, 15-year certain, and so on. What you will also see is that the highest monthly benefit will probably be your single life option, because this pension is just covering one life with no guarantee to continue those payments. The obvious downside is, because it's covering one life, if you do start the pension and quickly pass away, that pension is gone forever. Now, in our case study here, we are looking at Mark's situation, and Mark is married to Linda, who is also 60 years old. So if Mark takes that single life, again, and passes away, Linda will be left with nothing. When I talk to them, this is a non-starter for them. Now, there are advanced options here, like taking the higher single life and buying life insurance on the difference, but we're really going to focus here on pension versus lump sum in this video. So for Mark and Linda, they decide they are either going to do 100% joint survivor pension or the lump sum. We've come down to these two options. Again, we're going to focus here, but there's a ton of other videos that analyze the different pension options themselves that are great. So we've narrowed down these options for Mark and Linda. We have a 100% joint survivor, that's $50,000 pension, or their lump sum offer is $600,000 that they can take, roll it over, and invest it in an IRA. The way you want to analyze this decision is by finding what we call the hurdle rate. Or, in simpler terms, what do I need to make on the lump sum amount to match and preferably beat the pension deal? Because if you take that lump sum, you are essentially saying, I think I can do better than what my pension can do, and I'm going to create my own pension. So if Mark and Linda take the pension, it will take them 12 years just to get back the lump sum they could have had day one, right? Because $50,000 times 12 is $600,000. But if Mark and Linda instead take that $600,000, they're most likely going to invest it, which means if they do take $50,000 a year, they should hopefully have something left over after 12 years. So let's find that hurdle rate for them. What do they need to make on the lump sum to win? First, we have to discuss life expectancy. Remember, the pension that we're looking at here is covering 2 lives, not just one. So we need life expectancy for the couple, not just Mark and not just Linda. So we're actually going to use Linda's life expectancy because if we look at both of them, they are the same age, but women have a higher life expectancy or longer life expectancy. So we are going to go with that one. So you can do this on Social Security website. There's life expectancy calculators. So if we just start there for them, we see life expectancy for Linda at age 60 today will be age 86 for her. So that is 26 years away. Now we plug that into our financial calculator here and we find a hurdle rate of 6.8%. What this means, if Mark and Linda take the lump sum of $600,000, withdraw $50,000 every year, and they grow the remaining balance at 6.8% per year, they can match the same cash flows as the pension. Now, what you'll notice is the further we go out, the higher the hurdle rates, the harder it is to beat the pension. Mark and Linda both have longevity in their family, so they want to see the hurdle rate at longer lifespans. So if we push it out to 90 years old for Linda, it's 7.3%. 95 years old, it's 7.7%. We're either going to look at 100 years old because Linda has a grandparent that reached that age, and we find the hurdle rate at 7.9% if life expectancy is 100 years old. What you will quickly realize is that this decision depends heavily on your lifespan. The shorter the lifespan, the more in favor of the lump sum. The longer the lifespan, the more in favor of the pension, typically. Now, it depends exactly what your employer offers you, so you have to run these numbers for yourself. Lifespan, of course, is a variable we do not know for certain, but we can talk about it in terms of probabilities. Now, before we go deeper into Mark and Linda's case and how they made the decision to take the pension, we first have to talk about something called the Pension Benefit Guarantee Corporation, or PBGC for short. This is a government agency that insures private sector pensions, meaning they step in to cover the benefits in the case of employer bankruptcy or an underfunded plan. This may seem unlikely to have happened, but I've actually seen clients win pensions that ended up with PBGC. So I look at their statements and it has PBGC because it went to them. We have seen massive companies like United Airlines, Delta. Airline companies do not fare well, apparently, for pensions. We have seen them default on these plans and have to be picked up by PBGC. So the first thing you want to make sure with this topic is that you have this insurance coverage. You'll be able to see that in the summary plan description of the plan. Just double check it. The second thing you want to make sure is that your benefit is covered under this plan, because PBGC only covers up to a certain amount depending on your claiming age. So for Mark at age 60, if we look at the maximum monthly guarantee table on their website, we see maximum monthly coverage is $4,830 for single life annuity and $4,347 for joint and 50% survivor annuity. So for Mark and Linda, their monthly benefit is $4,167. So they should be fine, but these tables we're looking at only show coverage for single life and 50% survivor annuity, not 100%. So we'll want to go deeper and double check to make sure his benefit will be fully covered. Now that being said, let's talk about the 6 key reasons Mark and Linda found the pension route more attractive. First reason, and we talked about this briefly, but Mark and Linda are very concerned about longevity. Like I mentioned, they both have longevity in their family, especially Linda, who's mentioned to me that she has 2 grandparents, one who reached age 100 and one who reached age 98. When we look at that hurdle rate, going all the way out to age 100, it climbs to just a little under 8%. So for them, this was a daunting required investment return, especially for 2 conservative investors. And what we see for research as well is that for high earners, they tend to have a longer life expectancy. We can talk about all the reasons why, but Mark and Linda have been high earners for their entire career. They are also very focused on health. So this, combined with the family history of longevity, means that the guaranteed income for life is really attractive for them. And the second key reason is Mark and Linda were not just thinking about the future or longevity or later ages, but they were also really focused on the first 5 to 10 years of retirement. For them, retiring at age 60 meant they were starting retirement with a large portion of their expenses being fixed rather than discretionary expenses, meaning these were expenses they had to pay no matter what, with no wiggle room. The reason they're starting retirement with higher fixed costs, one, is they need to pay out of pocket for health insurance before Medicare, and they wanted to prepare for this cost assuming minimal to no subsidies. Second reason is Mark and Linda had about 5 years left on their mortgage. So we run the numbers, we know they can cover these expenses, but they are very concerned because these expenses are front-loaded and again, fixed. In a down market, these aren't expenses they can eliminate. They have to continue paying them. And on top of that, the third key reason they had a desire for a guaranteed stream of income is because they really wanted to travel quite a bit in the first 5 to 10 years of retirement. Mark and Linda are retiring so they can do things, especially while they're younger and they're healthy. They share with me that they have a desire for extended international travel and they want to dive day one into their hobbies they've been putting off for a while they've been working. Mark and Linda expect big costs early in retirement and they want to make sure these costs are protected. Now, the fourth key reason that ties into this decision is that they are concerned with something we called sequence of returns risk. Is the risk that they retire and experience a bad market. They understand that the first decade of retirement will set the tone for what they can spend for the rest of retirement. And this was the attraction with the pension. The pension does not care about a market crash, poor bond yields, or any other economic disaster we can think of, because this paycheck will continue as long as the employer is solvent, and even if they aren't, it will go to PBGC. The thing about a pension or any form of guaranteed income is it's like a bond allocation in your portfolio. It's steady, it's boring, and most importantly, it's protective. In the case of Mark and Linda, the attractive part of their pension is it covered most of their fixed expenses. But a downside to the pension that we have to talk about, and I talked about with them, is an erosion of purchasing power. In other words, $4,000 a month today is not the same as $4,000 a month in 20 years. It's great that this pension is going to do a lot of heavy lifting in the early years of retirement. But what about later on? With no inflation adjustment on this pension, and if we assume 3% inflation annually, the purchasing power of this $50,000 pension will be cut in half in just under 23 years. But the pension allowed a very important psychological shift for Mark and Linda that would help with this problem. They tell me that because they have a source of income coming in, they actually feel more comfortable taking on risk with the rest of their investments. One thing you have to know about this couple is they are typically very conservative investors, which is another reason the lump sum option worried them. They weren't sure they had the behavioral discipline required to meet that hurdle rate. But with a pension, their capacity for risk actually improved. So key reason number 5 here in favor of the pension is that it allowed them to be more comfortable with investing heavier in equities. Equities are one of the greatest inflation hedges out there. Mark and Linda were honest with me that they did not have the best track record of being disciplined investors, and they worried about what they would do in a down market in retirement. A combination of now working with an advisor and again, that pension they felt would make the ride easier. And this is a factor that only you can decide. But if you do have a pension, I'd encourage you to look at it like a bond option and to have the rest of your investments, if appropriate, just be a little bit more aggressive. But there was also another powerful inflation hedge the pension would help unlock. Key reason number 6 actually deals with Social Security. I made this argument in a video before, but if you are worried about bad market returns, high inflation, and outliving your money, Social Security is actually one of the best hedges against all 3 of those risks if you delay it to your maximum benefit age, 70. Because of longevity risk, Mark and Linda want to lock in the maximum benefit for their Social Security. But without a guaranteed income source already coming in, they weren't confident that they could wait that long, the full 10 years until age 70. The pension took the pressure off turning on an income source, and now because they have that coming in, they decide they are comfortable delaying Social Security for the maximum benefit at age 70. Now, finally, the most important point and really the deciding factor in this decision for them was key reason number 7 for simplicity. Every person has their own tolerance for complexity, just like they have their own tolerance for risk. And even with the help of an advisor, Mark and Linda realized that psychologically, they will feel much more comfortable spending if the money is coming in the form of a monthly paycheck rather than from a dwindling pot of money, as they would phrase it. This is key for them because they've had high demand jobs for decades. And when we run the numbers showing that they can retire today, they don't want to waste a second. They are eager to retire and hit the ground running, which means they can have no fear around spending. And research really backs this up. It's very interesting. In a research paper titled Retirees Spend Lifetime Income, Not Savings, they find that retirees with a guaranteed income stream like pensions tend to spend more freely and report higher satisfaction, framing it as income as a license to spend effect. Contrast that with a lump sum. A lot of retirees find withdrawing from savings triggers a psychological resistance. Ambiguity, loss aversions, and complexity often plagues retirees. Now, we can get around this resistance for a lot of retirees with more education and framing the lump sum as a monthly paycheck, but Mark and Linda appear clearly in the boat of increased comfort with an income source, and they want to dive in day one, recognizing time as their most precious resource. They really want to eliminate anything that would hold them back from spending. And managing a large lump sum of money, having to decide on investments and rebalancing and timing was something they felt would hold them back. Pensions are a hyper-personal topic, not just because the numbers are different for every pension, but also because the behavior and feelings of comfort are different as well. In the end, Mark and Linda didn't necessarily choose the pension because it was mathematically correct. They chose it because it gave them both a solid financial floor and the freedom to live out the early retirement of their dreams. And that's a trait I think I can stand behind. Now that you've seen this real-world case study of quitting your job at 60 and taking a pension, you can better understand what early retirement with guaranteed income actually looks like. If you want me to help analyze your pension options and determine the optimal strategy for your retirement, click the first link in the description and book a call with me. I'll see you in the next one.